is AI as interview tool smart or cheating?
AI is interview tool. And this is during the interview or before the interview as
Let's
interview
say
prep?
before the interview.
Before the interview.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Um, I'm a big fan of AI and LLMs. And I'm sure you guys are like, really, Liz? You're making fun of it sometimes. Like anything in life, pros and cons. But I'm gonna say it's absolutely helpful.
Yeah, I agree with you. So I believe that we as humans, the biggest difference between humans and animals is that we know how to use tools, right? And so AI is a tool in our toolbox. So why not use it? Of course we should use it. And if you were to think about what makes a contractor world class compared to a normal contractor, it would be because this world class contractor has both taste and they know exactly which tool to use from their toolbox at the right time, and they know how to optimize their tools. And so same thing as AI as an interview tool or any other interview tool. Lewis, your book, Decode and Conquer, that is another tool that we have in toolbox. You as the human, you're kind of like the tool master. You get to pick and choose what tool is the best tool for you. And the biggest difference between someone who's a tool master and someone who's kind of being tooled by the tools is that you're leading the tools that you're using versus being led by the tools that you're using. And so if you are using any tools for the right way, it's definitely smart.
Mhm.
That's my perspective.
And I saw in the chat window, Tracy, uh, thanks for the kudos about the questions. And actually, I get zero of the credit. These are all Nancy's questions. And so this is Nancy's brilliance shining through. She knew what you guys will collectively had in your heads. And so thank you for the compliment, Tracy, and goes towards Nancy.
Thank you. Thank you, Lewis, and thank you, Tracy. I see Monica's comment. Back to the big tech interviews, whether they're easy or hard. So Monica said, more signal to go after the noise with structured interview for sure. And that said, if you have spent enough time preparing rigorously for Meta and Google, you have a fairly good shot of meeting most requirements in unstructured ones that come out strong. I completely agree with you, Monica. And in fact, I often recommend, and you will see this in the last Maven Lightning session that I gave, the strategy that I recommend is if you want to target Meta and Google, you actually want to go through those interviews first and make sure that you prepare it well. And afterwards, when you go through team matching and whatnot, then you go and go after the other interviews. And because at that time, you're in prime shape to interview at other companies. You're like this Olympic level athlete, and then you could go compete in the other leagues. So yes, completely with you, Monica. Uh,
um, I see Tejas' question. I'll get to it in a little bit, but just real quickly, for everyone about the unstructured interviews, I'll give you guys a specific example just so that you guys have a sense. So this one's actually attributed to Thomas Edison, and it is claimed that when he interviews candidates, he would ask them this interview question. He would say, Lewis, when you drink a bowl of soup, do you put the salt before or after? And apparently there is a right answer to this question, which is if you say before, Thomas Edison is going to judge you and say, like, Lewis is not even experimenting. He doesn't even know if the soup is well seasoned or not. He's just assuming. And so because he said before, it's a ding. Right. And that's an example of an unstructured interview question, which is, is there some sort of crazy first principle logic to it? Maybe, but it'd just be so wrong to get dinged for some arbitrary reason like that. So, I mean, maybe an example of a non-Thomas Edison example of a unstructured interview question. Maybe Nancy's favorite question is like, Lewis, do you like art? Yes or no? And she had some like strong belief that people who appreciate and enjoy art are somehow better for the role. And I said, no, I don't do art. I just play beer pong all day and video games. That's where it kind of hurts by having this unstructured interviews. And so, just wanted to share that distinction. And for those of you guys who are nerds about a talent assessment, Laszlo Bock actually referred to a pretty good scientific study that basically said like of the whatever 25 different ways to assess candidates, including their SAT scores, GPA, structured interviews, work sample tests. The two best ways, not perfect, but the two best ways to evaluate candidates is either to do a structured interview, kind of like Amazon style, or a work sample test. So kind of hopefully that clarifies. And then Tejas, quick question or quick clarification. Unfortunately, my publisher, all my books are sold through Amazon, and so I don't have any special discount codes aside from whatever Amazon might have once in a while. But I haven't seen any discount codes coming up from Amazon recently.
Thank you for that answer. And RJ, how long should one interview prep for / how many mocks?
Nancy, I'll let you go first. Especially since I just had a monologue.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I do have a spicy take on this, and of course, I'm going to say it depends. But the mental model I want you to have is a bell curve. So in the beginning of your interview prep process, you're at the beginning of that bell curve, and you're going to go through this. Maybe you read Decode and Conquer, and so you have some idea on what it is that these interviews are asking for. So theoretically, it kind of makes sense to you. And so when you're at the bottom of the bell curve, you're really just acquiring the knowledge that you need to go through this interview prep process. But as you go more in depth and you're actually applying the knowledge, this is where the effort needs to go up, and that's where you're going up the bell curve. But you're going to see a point that you're going to hit blocks along the way, and it's pretty much going to come kind of like in a pattern. So for example, in a product sense, you might get stuck with segmentation, or you might get stuck with more creative solutioning. And until you could break through that hump, and until that part feels easier and more straightforward for you, you're not at the peak of the bell curve. You have to keep on going. And the minute that you should schedule your interview is actually when you're already at the peak of the curve. And so you know that you're going to come down fairly soon in a week or two. And so how long it takes you to go up to the top of the bell curve, that is very situational and dependent. And so it depends. Louis, what's your take?
Just to add on top of it, Nancy's got it bang on because Nancy is talking about bell curves. If you guys are looking for some data, the only data that I've seen comes from the founder of interviewing.io, Elaine Lerner. She's got some beautiful graphs about the number of mock interviews relative to performance, where performance starts to flatten out. So if you guys are curious, you can check that out. It is, however, I think just for software engineers, and so you're not going to be able to see the product management data. I don't have the product management data. I do run a Slack group where people practice one another. I get the sense just seeing people mention how many mocks they've done. I feel like the 30 range is a bit of a target for some people in terms of like the minimum number of mocks that one has to do to kind of feel really, really confident for an important big tech interview. And then I've seen people who cite numbers that just seem massive to me, but I think for good reason, numbers in like the 100+ range as well. So it's something. I think even during the pandemic, I would be surprised in my Slack group when people would tell me that they would do like 2 mocks a day. And I'm like, wow, how do you squeeze that in with your day job? But that definitely was a special time for sure.
So for me, my number is over 100, but I, looking back in hindsight, I wasn't doing it right. And that's also one of the reasons why I do what I do now, is so that you don't have to go through 100 mocks and then not pass the interview, because that's what happened to me.
There you go. First-hand anecdote right there. Nancy's part of the 100 club.
Yes, that's me. That's totally me. RJ has a question. Is the Slack still free?
Yeah, absolutely. Quasi free. We just have a new requirement now to basically say if you want to be part of the Slack group, you have to get the new Decode and Conquer 5th edition. And people are like, yeah, Lewis, way to go to try to like sell more books. Absolutely part of it. Nancy would attest to it. It takes a lot of time and care and effort to be able to cultivate these materials. But there was really a bigger trigger, which is um, kind of the same situation where I was like, huh, are things a little bit out of whack in the Slack group in 2024? And we found out there was a lot of people who were just joining the Slack group who did not have foundational knowledge. And we're not even talking about like, do you know the difference between exit rate and bounce rate? We had people showing up into the Slack group and saying, so how do I solve a product design question? And people are like, use a framework. So what frameworks are out there? And everybody was just saying, hey, this is nuts. We have a lot of people who are just not informed of the basics. And so that's why we have this new requirement that everybody gets this edition so that everyone's got this kind of same foundation before um, doing mocks with one another.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense, right? You don't want to practice with someone who didn't really put in the time to acquire the knowledge to begin with. So,
Yes.
step one of the prep is acquire the knowledge that you don't yet already have. Maybe you already have it, and then it's good to brush up the knowledge. And then step two is to apply, right? So, you don't want to apply the knowledge when the partner hasn't acquired the knowledge yet. So that
Absolutely.
makes a lot of sense for me. So right now, I do want to transition to do a
That
little
was a great
exercise.
segue for the second part because it's all about application. So let's jump
Yes,
into it.
that's exactly it. We're gonna go through this exercise together, and and kind of discuss what you think about AI's product sense for this particular prompt. Design a product at Meta to help people enjoy art. And the reason why I decided to put this exercise at the end, knowing that we're going to go over time, is we were talking about whether AI is a good tool or not. And my perspective is that it's a wonderful tool, just like all the other tools that you have in your toolbox. But the difference between an expert and someone who's being tooled by the tools is that you need to know where AI is spot on versus where AI is not spot on. And so I want to share with you how I would personally go through this exercise working with AI together on this prompt. All right, so this particular AI has been trained on good product sense. And so to answer this question, this AI already knows to structure the answer in this way that we expect to see in a product sense interview. So starting with the mission, and then you would talk about the problem space. You would then identify some segments that make sense for this problem space, and then you would identify problems for a particular segment. So starting with the mission, since we're building it for Meta, it makes sense that AI says the mission for this art product is to create meaningful connections through shared artistic experiences. That makes complete sense to me. And then it goes on to talk about the different stakeholders in this problem space. So you have the art collectors, you might have the art galleries, and then of course you would have the end users. Now, AI says to focus on end users, which also makes sense. That's the largest population. It fits with what Facebook is going after. So we're going to pick the end users. And within the end users, it came up with these three segments. Right? We have the casual users, the enthusiasts, and then we have the experts. And now this is actually one of the hardest parts of the product sense interview. It's like, now what? Now that you have identified the segments, what's next? Now you actually have to make a call. And making a call is the hardest part in the product sense interview. Now, AI says, okay, well, we could prioritize based on variables like reach and underserved. And so AI decides to prioritize number two, the enthusiasts. So I'm going to pause here. I'm curious what you, Lewis, think about AI's response. And folks on the call, thank you for staying behind with us. Also, let us know what you think about AI's response so far in the chat and let me know.
Gosh, I was gonna say, Nancy, maybe I can take a back seat on this one because I don't know anything about art. In fact, for one of my books, my wife's like, Lewis, the book cover you came up with looks like poop. And I'm like, I never took color theory. I don't understand art. Sorry. So when I saw this question, I'm like, man, couldn't we have just talked about creating a product for the DMV or the Olympics or gardening? Maybe art is like the worst thing. And
Well,
I'm sure
that's okay. We
the
will
interviewer was like, no, Lewis, like,
we'll
no,
talk through
you
it.
can't have a pass on this question. You just
Okay.
suck at art.
So
Um,
Ash says I would go for casual, bigger audience, lower hanging fruit, increase engagement on meta platforms. So for me, this is where I'm stuck because AI says, okay, we could prioritize by reach and prioritize by how underserved this segment is. I think that sounds very logical, and it would be easy to apply that prioritization framework if I actually felt more sure about how to actually apply it. So, for example, I actually know pretty confidently that there's probably less experts compared to everyone else. That to me feels very logical and very intuitive to make a claim like that. But between one and two, the casuals and the enthusiasts, I have no idea. I don't know which one has bigger reach, and I don't know which one is more underserved because I could argue it both ways. If your product is to help people enjoy art, maybe I should target the casuals. Like they don't really enjoy art today compared to the people who are more enthusiastic, right? And so at this point, I don't know. And it is very hard for me to go on in a product sense interview if I don't know whether I'm making a good call or not. And oftentimes, I think the most important thing to do in a product sense is to stay very grounded in your discussion so that you can actually carry the conversation forward instead of being carried kind of by the framework or by making up random decisions. That doesn't work if you actually want to show up like a leader and have a very meaningful and intentional discussion on this topic. And so for me, if I don't know, I cannot go on by just making a random call and pretend that that is the right call. So at this point in time, I don't agree with AI, but I also don't disagree. It's just that I don't know if it's right or not. And so I cannot go on and pretend everything is right. So that's one call out I would make. And let's go on to see what AI does next. So with the enthusiast segment, AI came up with three problems. So they might have a problem with discovering the right type of art that they could enjoy, or they could have a problem engaging with the art on their own because they don't really know about the art and so they don't really enjoy it. Or they might have a problem engaging with other people on this piece of art or on this collection of art. So AI then decides to prioritize um, this particular problem, C, engaging with others because of frequency and because of severity. So, Louis, I know you want to take a back seat, but just let me know if you want to chime in. What do you think
Anybody else
about?
want to chime in?
Yeah,
Let's see. I think I'm still behind on the segmentation piece, and so maybe I'll
yeah,
just
me too.
quickly give my 2 cents there. Um, the couple of things that kind of came to mind when I was looking at the segments that came up was I felt like it was maybe a little bit too simplistic from the AI perspective. When I look at casual enthusiasm experts, it seems like it was just categorizing it by level of expertise,
Hmm.
which I guess we could put it in the demographic bucket. Um, my sense, Nancy, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like Meta, at least when I was doing the research for the new fifth edition, seems to appreciate psychographics significantly more than demographics. Basically, what people believe, their value system, et cetera. Um, and so I think I might lean a little bit more into that. So if we're trying to connect or create meaningful connections through shared artistic experiences, um, like why do they want to connect over artistic experiences? Maybe they're trying to connect uh, uh, through a date, right? You're trying to like enjoy art with somebody that you're currently dating, or maybe you're a student and you want to connect over these artistic experiences so that you can learn art theory. And then there's all sorts of like micro segmentation from it. You could be trying to learn about art through these experiences, either in K through 12, in college, maybe some sort of postgraduate study. And so um, that that's kind of my sense. We could have a lot more specificity, which would help us further along. I mean, just even that dating scenario seems really interesting because all the times when I'm happily married and all the times when I try to take a date to the museum, I'm like, oh yeah, that looks weird. I could do that Matisse, or might as well even do a Picasso at that point. I'm like, that's
Yes.
easy. And I'm
Yes.
sure my dates, like maybe Nancy has been in a situation like Lewis, you don't know what you're. Yep. Oh, Matisse is not easy.
So, there is a question from the audience. Does that mean if you're in an interview, you would never identify a segment that you weren't sure of, reach, underserved element of? Given that we're often presented with spaces we don't know anything about, it's tough, and and you have to make an educated guess versus really knowing. And yes, that's exactly it. So if I don't know something, it is hard for me to pretend that I made the right call. And yes, we do have to make educated guesses. But my point is, if we were to make a educated guess based on reach or based on underserved, every step of the way, I am guessing. And so I wouldn't call this a educated guess. I would just call this a guess. To me, this is not educated guess. Just because I just don't know. I can argue either way. And so when that happens, I actually want to think more about it. There's got to be another way where I could segment the space, similar to what Lewis was just talking about. This is basically a signal that you want to think more about this before blindly applying what everyone else is saying, which is, okay, you could prioritize by reach and then how underserved someone is, and then go from there. That's one. And then in the problem space, AI says, all right, we're going to prioritize based on frequency and by severity. And this is where I'm stuck again. Because yes, maybe I could see that discovery is not really a problem because we are targeting the enthusiasts. They probably already have uh, some kind of art that they're already drawn to. But between engaging with the art myself versus engaging with other people on this piece of art or on this collection of art, I don't know that the frequency is higher for problem C, right? I don't know that the severity is higher for problem C. In fact, I could argue it both ways, right? So again, if I'm not sure and I don't have conviction, I cannot pretend that I'm making an educated guess. I'm only guessing, right? It's no longer educated. And so again, in this case, because I am not convinced that AI made the right call or the wrong call, I just don't know, that just means that I want to think more deeply about it. And actually, at this point in the interview, AI said, "Well, C actually ladders up with the mission really well. We want to create meaningful connections, and so let's just do C." But then, if you could argue that you're just using the mission to prioritize, then why go through segmentation? Why go through the problem identification if you just know from the mission, all right, we're going to build shared experiences, and so we're going to connect people over art, right? So using the mission to prioritize, again, to me is not enough. Right? I need to think more about it. And so here's what I would do if I were to think more about it, using AI as a partner. So I would ask, why don't people enjoy art? And who actually enjoys art? And what are the differences between them? So for me, I have this photograph behind me. It's a photo of the ocean. And every time I look at it, I'm going to move out of the way so you can see it. Right? Blue sky, beautiful beach. I feel a certain way when I look at this photo. Why is that? It's because it creates this emotional response from me. But when I went to the Louvre and I looked at Mona Lisa in real life, I didn't feel anything. There was no emotional connection. So that's one example where someone enjoys the piece of art. And I also have another example, which is this piece of most beautiful artwork produced by my daughter. And so it was actually folded up like this, and it says, "Love you." And then she put this underneath my office door because I was on a call. And so she just put this under the door. And then I opened it when I was done with the call. And then it's a picture of me and her at the park having a picnic. And that's because I took her to the park and we had a picnic that one day and she drew about it. Right. So when I saw this, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best. Like, this is way better than Mona Lisa. Why is that? Why do you think I enjoy this way more than Mona Lisa? Let me know in the chat. And Louis, what do you think?
It's personal to you, relevant because it's your daughter.
Yes.
And then it's not just about the art, it's the expression of one's love to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's multifaceted. The minute you start to think more deeply about the crux of the problem, you would start to see more angles, more segments, and more problems that you could identify. And so after thinking through this, I came up with two problems that are, I think, more relevant to this discussion that AI did not come up with in the first prompt. So I realized you cannot enjoy something that you don't understand. I don't understand what the big deal is with Mona Lisa. I don't get it, right? That's why I don't enjoy it. And then second, when you put in the time to make something, or you know the person who put in the time to make something, you appreciate it a lot more. You recognize the effort. I could visualize my daughter like making this drawing. I recognize that, and now I appreciate it more. And so one of the problems that could occur in this problem space is that if you create the art yourself, it's also more likely that you would enjoy it. So now I came up with two problems that AI didn't identify because the segment was I think even if I were to come up with the same exact segments as AI, I would still say, okay, there are people who probably would not have any emotional response to this type of art. But there are people who would respond to a different type of art, like music. My husband, for example, he listens to music, he enjoys music, but like he has no feelings about other type of art. So that's one segment. And then maybe someone like me would fall under another segment. I like music, but I don't stream Spotify. But when I look at something, I feel emotional about it. I have feelings about it, right? So that's one way of segmenting that is deeper than kind of just going by what AI says. And the way I prioritize is no longer going to be reach or underserved because that's not relevant and I cannot stand behind that decision. And so I cannot be grounded in this discussion anymore. So I'm going to think more deeply. And that is, I'm going to prioritize based on what actually moves the needle. In this case, it's if you don't get it, you're not going to enjoy it. Or if you didn't make it, you're not going to enjoy it. Kind of like that. And so these will be the problem spaces of problems that I identify. And then I would have more fun coming up with solutions because I've remained grounded in this discussion.
Nancy, let me just jump in real quick and just address some of the comments in the chat. So Michael brought this up, somebody else brought this up as well, which is it almost feels like in this new world where Meta wants us to talk about psychographic segments, it's hard to come up with segments that are mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. And I kind of agree. And so there are people out there who are looking for things to be Misi, basically, especially if they're former McKinsey folks. And so maybe one way that you can approach it, Michael and others, is maybe you can have you can start with demographics so that it is mutually exclusive. You can say, hey, we're looking at people who love art from the ages of like age to 30, 30 to 60, 60 to 80. And then in each one of those demographic buckets, they have different psychographics. And then you can start listing out the psychographics. Like, hey, some people want to connect over art because for educational reasons. Some want to connect over art for some other reason and kind of just bucket it that way. Some other comments that I saw a lot of people say like, oh, this like segmentation or this is art. I struggle with art just like Lewis does. And so I hope the conclusion isn't that you should give up. In fact, I feel like the way that I modeled it should give you guys hope. Like, okay, Lewis is bad at color theory. He doesn't know as much about art as Nancy does, but this is kind of where that feedback of like, this is a test of how you think. And they're like, oh, like even though Lewis does not like knows nothing about color theory, if he really just was patient with himself, he can think of different segments that relates to art, like the K through 12 scenario, like the dating scenario. And so if I were you guys, I would take that as hope that like, huh, I actually know a little bit more about art. Huh, Lewis knows a little bit more about art than he actually realizes. And so definitely don't psych yourself out. And then I think it was Catherine who shared a good tip for the rest of us, which is like, hey, the when it comes to the pain points or understanding the segments, it really helps to understand the what um, and and um, why they're trying to achieve something. And so that reminds me of basically breaking it down into the core actions for that segment, what they're trying to do, maybe if they're learning or if they're trying to go on a date. And that the idea of core actions really comes down to another concept, which is sketching out the core workflow. And that's a really great diagnostic tool to figure out where the pain points lie. So great tip from Catherine.
Yeah, I love this discussion. The point that I really want to make is AI can simulate product sense. And so if you were to ask, is AI a good tool? Absolutely, it is, just like any other tool. But only you, the human, can tell when it's just that, a simulation. And so when AI is not giving you something that kind of resonates, you don't want to be tooled by the tool. You actually want to lead the tool. And you want to be the world-class contractor who has both taste and an expert in knowing which tool to use at what time from their toolbox. So with that, Lewis, what are the final tips and advice you could give folks on this call and those who are watching the recording later?
Yeah, just one parting thought. The world has definitely changed. It's a very difficult time. It's a trying time. Standards have elevated. Um, Interviewers expect more. Um, I know, we've got so much going on and we want the quick fix. We're like, hey, I've got this crazy interview. ChatGPT can get me ready in 5 minutes. Nancy says no. Your friend might say, hey, just go to YouTube, watch these 4 videos. I say no because they're saying contradictory and potentially outdated information. And so, you know, implicitly, am I telling you guys like, hey, I want you to take it slow? Do I want you guys to sit down every night and read this book? The answer is yes, because um, even with Chat GPT and you feel like you've got knowledge at your fingertips, the time that it takes to retrieve that information from Chat GPT will just take minutes, possibly hours. Um, it's so much faster to retrieve it if you've got it in your head. And because of the knowledge that you have, you can even make Chat GPT do even more incredible things. And so there is no substitute for knowledge. And that was really kind of the primary thesis, rewriting this new version of Decode and Conquer. And so I know it wasn't my hope. I mean, I was putting myself in your guys' shoes and like, would I want to read a 500 plus page book? And my personal feeling was no. But I'm glad I did it because there's just so much knowledge that I packed into it. And even myself, I revisit it time to time. And it's been a helpful reference because this is just kind of the new world that we live in. Contrary to what we think, where knowledge is just one chat GPT query away, it's much, much better to have that knowledge in our heads because your interviewer is not going to like it when you say, hey, Nancy, great question about art, but can I use chat GPT? So like, no,
Well,
like, we're going to pull
I
that.
I think if my company allowed, I would actually welcome people to use any tool.
Yeah.
Like, feel free to use ChatGPT.
I'll push back on that. Like your interviewers might allow you to use chat GPT in the interviews, but I think as a hiring manager, I don't know if I would allow my employees to use ChatGPT or even Llama at a Mark Zuckerberg meeting. You still got to be able to think on your feet,
Yes.
just have your responses ready. Mark's not going to be like, okay, Lewis, he'll probably have that voice. And they're like, hey, like go spend 5 minutes, do your ChatGPT, and we'll just sit here waiting for your response.
Right. Exactly.
It's
So,
That's just lame. He's not going to go for
I mean,
it.
when we were in elementary school, we were not allowed to take the calculator to our math test. But in grad school, you could take all the tools with you, fancy calculators, cheat sheets, whatnot. And so for me, if I worked in a company that allows any type of tooling to support you, you can, but then you still have to optimize for the experience on the interviewer side. So you don't want to be like, hold on one second, let me because like that's awkward. That's weird.
Unless they say it's okay. But if they say not, then
Right.
you just have to do it the OG way.
Yes. For me, I really want to share. I believe firmly that AI is a very good tool, but you, the human, you need to know where AI is spot on and where AI is not spot on, and that's on you, the tool owner, to vet any tool that you're using. And then, how do you actually vet? Well, when you are overloaded with information, how do you know when someone is telling you the right information? Well, you have to start by thinking more deeply about any problem that you're solving, product sense, execution, or behavioral question. You want to think more deeply about it. And that's because clear communication actually starts with clear thinking and not the other way around. And so if you want to communicate clearly, whether on a job or in an interview, it starts with having very clear thinking first. And that's basically at the root of it on how you can assess whether a tool is good or not. And then I do have a frequently asked question because yes, this sounds great. Yes, I could read a book. Yes, I could like do all these things. I could think more deeply, but gosh, I'm just so defeated. I'm not motivated. Louis, what would you say to a lot of us out there that feels this way?
You just got to do what you got to do. um, I, I know it sounds like a soundbite, but I'm not joking. I mean, even last week, and actually Nancy knows this. When we chatted about 6 weeks ago, I said, Nancy, I have so much respect for you. You're a YouTube streamer. You do all this other stuff on video, and video is a medium that's not natural to me. And Nancy is like probably thinking in her head, like, okay, I've heard all of the reasons, Lilith, all of the complaining, all of the whining. Like, I don't know what your problem is. Like, I'm a YouTube streamer and I just do it. Just join the freaking crowd. And so last week, um, I got past my unmotivated self and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna do it today. I'm just gonna record some TikTok videos, put it out there. And it reminds me of one of my favorite authors. She's like, you know, we all think that like nobody has crappy first drafts, but we all do. So, um, you might not sound like Nancy, but I don't know, Nancy, you can tell us after your 100th mock, did you sound a lot different from your first mock? I hope so.
Well, here's the thing that I never knew that I never thought that I would say, because when I was going through the meta interview, I was already a senior PM. And so when you put a senior PM through this process, it's like, why do I have to take the SATs to prove that I could already go to college, right? It's a very weird feeling. But what happened afterwards, because I kept on failing this interview, what happened after that I finally cracked it is I actually became a better PM because of this process. Now, this is something that I never thought that I would say before going through the process, and it's valid because it does help you think differently.
Yeah. Every single experience is a good experience. So anytime we feel like we're uncomfortable situation, it probably means that there's something super, super important for us to learn. So
Absolutely.
Put me in the same boat.
And I would say, if you're feeling unmotivated, I have a hypothesis on why that is when it comes to job search and interview prep. Is because most people think that interview prep is this thing that you do on the side. You kind of have to do this chore in order to get the job that you want. And you feel like, this chore is so unnecessary because I can already do the job. I know I can. Right? Most people feel that way. And I would say if you treat interview prep as this very ad hoc and if you treat it like a chore, I actually think it is not good enough in terms of the time spent. If you're only preparing for the interview for the sole purpose of interview and nothing else, I agree that this time spent just does not feel meaningful. And that's one of the reasons why I wasn't motivated. It's like it just feels so dumb. I have to take the SATs again, right? It didn't feel good. But there is another way of thinking about it, and that is what matters more in this process is to develop the right communication skills and leadership skills that will actually serve you long after the interviews are over. Because the root of interviews is communication. If you get really good at communication, you're just going to take that with you on your job beyond interview prep. And that's actually the sustainable advantage of prepping the right way. It's not just about what you say, but how you think. And so if you think that going through this journey actually is going to 10x your career, why wouldn't you do it the right way? And that's also why my clients would say something like this. My VP said that my framing is landing more than usual, and now I know why. Right? And this post will come out tomorrow if you want to read more about it. That would be my 2 cents. With that, I know that we're way over time, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And Louis, I don't know how you're doing with time.
Yeah. Let's see. I probably have to get going a little bit, but if there's maybe like one question I can hang around for real quickly.
So, folks, if there's any questions that we can answer for you, put it in the chat and let us know.
If not, no worries. You know how to find Nancy, and then you guys can just Google me and find my website there.
Yeah.
Last chance for questions. Going once, going twice. Thank you,
Kevin says,
Kevin, for
great
the
session.
nice note.
Thank you, Kevin, for coming.
All
Monica,
right.
thank you. Isabella, what is your favorite interview prep tool? Louis.
I feel like I should have like a 2025 response to it. And it's possible you could use AI, you know, Gemini, ChatGPT and voice mode and do practice there. Uh
We have free practice.
oh, Kevin.
Kevin. All
Kevin,
right.
Kevin from murework.ai is giving an opportunity for everybody to do interview mock practice. So thank you so much, Kevin, for chiming in. Um, I before we go back to Kevin's tool, I think the last couple of weeks I've reaffirmed my belief in human mock interviews. They just somehow I can't put a good explanation to it, but they can just somehow pick up on things about one's interview performance that you sometimes don't get with AI. And so I know it's hard to schedule with humans. Like people are halfway around the world, everyone's busy. I know it's embarrassing to try to do mocks with a person and flail badly. But it to me seems still like the best tool by a lot.
I have a spicy take on this because I see prep in 2 different stages. One is you have to get your content. You have to make sure the content of what you plan to say, like the content has to be good. And then the second part of the prep is the delivery of that content. And so getting the content good is something that is harder to do on your own and with your peers. But the delivery of the content is something that you could do on your own or with your peers. So for me, what's an effective tool is any tools that will help you improve the quality of your content. And for me, it would be someone who knows more than me. It could be AI, but then I have to make sure that AI is actually giving me the depth that I needed to give me.
I promised that was going to be my last question, but I was curious about this. How do you prep for AI native companies? Um, I can't access it right now, but the question bank, my question bank does have some reported questions from OpenAI, and I thought they were kind of intriguing and different. So definitely take a look there, and that should give you some thoughts. But yeah, absolutely, AI native is a brand new world for sure. Hey Nancy, with that, I do have to run, so
Yes, thank you so
I'll
much
just
for
drop
joining us.
off. But if you're going to continue the Q&A, totally okay. But yeah, I do have to run.
Yeah, thank you so much, Louis. Take
All right,
care.
take care, guys. Bye.
Catherine is asking, what was the tool from Kevin? Kevin, are you still on?
Yes, I'm still on.
Yeah,
Like,
can you put your link in the chat?
Sure. Like really well said by Nancy. I really believe it's a hybrid approach. It depends on everyone's situation. But here, feel free to connect. I'll just add my linking. But yeah, Nancy is just so awesome to hear your lesson again, like many years ago. I really enjoyed the discussion you have.
Oh, thanks. So Kevin and I are friends. We met because we were talking about PM interviews. We've been friends for a couple of years, and it's so interesting. Every time I meet a new person, like in this case, Lin, it's like, oh, everyone knows Kevin. So every new person I meet, they also know Kevin.
Does everyone know you?
If you haven't, so I want to answer Connie's question on how to prepare for AI native companies. Definitely, if you know the types of questions they ask, that is a shortcut to the preparation instead of guessing. Louis Lin Question Bank is awesome at this, and also very thankful for the community to want to contribute continuously to Louis Lin's Question Bank. So definitely leverage that if you haven't done that already. And I'm going to put the link here in the comments. Okay. Any other questions before we wrap? Ash, how can we best contact you for coaching? Oh, thank you for asking. I've signed up for your newsletter via the QR code. Well, thank you so much, Ash. Hold on one second. So I'm going to share my screen. If you scan the QR code, you would come to my newsletter. Can you see my screen? You can, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So on the newsletter, on the landing page of the newsletter, you would see past client success stories. So definitely gonna peek at them for inspiration and motivation. And if you do want to reach out, there is a second tab called Ace Your L6 and Above Interviews. And then there are links at the bottom. If you're a PM, click on the first link. If you're not a PM, but in a leadership role across all roles, you can click on the second link. And then I'll be in touch. Thank you for asking, Ash. Does anyone have any other questions? Monica, thank you so much. I'm glad that it resonated with you. Okay, well, hope everyone has today's Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. And I'm doing a community roundtable next Monday to talk about anything related to interviews. We could do mock interviews together if you would like. you'll also find the link via the QR code if you want to come and hang out next Monday. And with that, I'm going to say goodbye to you all, and hopefully I'll see you Monday. If not, I will see you in our next Maven Lightning lesson. Take care. Bye.